What's going on, guys? Boost Auto here. In this video, we're going to be installing our GM style two-tow mirrors on 23 and newer Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyon trucks. So let's get into it. Boost Auto is excited to introduce our GM style tow mirrors for 2023 and newer Chevy Colorados and GMC Canyons. These mirrors are designed to not only make towing easier with improved safety, visibility, and functionality, but also enhance the appearance of your truck. The mirrors come with a large power adjustable upper glass that allows for easy adjustment of viewing angles and feature lower convex glass to reduce blind spots and improve overall safety while driving. And thanks to the high output rear facing cargo lights, things stay crystal clear even in the dark. Our front mirror lights feature standard, flashing, signal, or sequential signal. Option them out with amber or a white running light along with our unique startup sequence. So, whether you're towing professionally, desire extra visibility while driving, or simply want the OE plus look on your truck, rest assured, our Boost Auto tow mirrors will check all your boxes and allow your build to stand out from the crowd. A couple things to note before we jump into the install. First, the procedure outlined in this install is for 2023 plus Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyon trucks. If your vehicle is a different year range, head on over to our website at boostauto.com for the latest in fitment and availability and to purchase all we have to offer. Now, let's get into the install. Before we start our install, go ahead and slide your seat all the way back and roll your windows down. Now go ahead and open your hood and locate your battery on the passenger side. Over on the passenger side of the vehicle, we'll continue with removing our negative battery terminal. And on the driver's side, we'll start removing our front door panel. To do so, you'll have 2 bolts in the grab handle and 2 bolts at the bottom. We'll start with removing the 2 bolts in the grab handle. Do so by removing this rubber mat inside the grab handle. I'm using a trim tool to help myself remove the rubber mat. It allows me to peel it up and then remove it. And now you can see the 2 bolts we need to remove. And at the bottom of the door panel, we'll have another 2 bolts that we need to remove. With those bolts removed, the only thing holding our door panel in at this time are clips all around the door panel. You're going to want to grab your trim tool and pry out the door panel. I like to start over here in this corner. And once the door panel is free, you're going to want to lift up and out. To remove the door latch, go ahead and press down on this white part here to release the tab, pull back, and then slide out the door latch. Then you'll have a connector up top here. To release it, press down on the tab, slide it out. Slide back the red locking tab, and then pull up on the white latch and slide the connector out. And now we can remove our door panel. To access the back of our mirror, we'll partially peel off this triangular trim panel. It is held by trim clips. Grab your trim tool and release it. And now you can gain access to the connector and the bolts holding in your mirror. For filming purposes, we're going to go ahead and remove this piece. You do not have to because you'll have enough room with this side out. Start with removing your mirror connector, pull out this red locking tab, and push in on the connector to remove it. While supporting your mirror on the other side, remove your 3 bolts. Go ahead and remove the mirror and set it aside. And now we can take our Boost Auto Style 2 GM tow mirror and install it onto the vehicle. You'll route your connector through the hole and align your mirror. Once the mirror is aligned, you can now install your hardware. Now plug in your factory mirror connector. Now in your kit, you'll take your door side extension harness. That's the side with the white connector on one end, and you'll plug it right into the mirror connector. Now your extension harness may not look like this exactly, depending on what you option for. However, if you do not have a certain color wire, you'll skip that step. To continue routing our extension harness into the cabin of the vehicle, we're going to remove our speaker. To do so, remove this screw at the top of the speaker. Once you remove that screw, you can now angle the top out and lift up to remove the speaker. You'll have this connector on the back side of the speaker. To remove it, pull out on the red locking tab and then press it in and release it. You can now remove the speaker. We'll now be releasing the connector at the door jamb boot. At the top of the connector, you'll have a red locking tab. You'll pull the locking tab out towards the vehicle. Once you slide the red locking tab completely out, you'll lift up on the black connector until you hear it lock in place. The connector should now be free. Wiggle the connector out. Now set it aside. To show a better image, I'm doing this out of the vehicle. You're going to release this red locking tab by pushing it straight out. Once you do so, this black latch will lift straight up. And it'll click in place knowing it is ready to be removed. Now you'll have the connector that's still in the door. On the top and bottom, you'll have a tab. All you need to do is pinch it and push it into the door. To gain extra slack on this harness, we'll release these tabs along the door. And now we can feed the harness out. To make the connector easy to work on, cut the zip tie holding down the wiring harness to the connector. On the door side of the connector, we'll be installing our door extension pins at this connector. To do so, we'll have to free the connector. We'll start by removing this white plate inside of the connector. You'll see at the corners of the connector, you'll have these black tabs sticking out. You'll release them by prying them open and pulling up on the white plate. You'll do it at all 4 corners. Now with that out of the way, we could unlock the connector so we could fully seat our pins. To do so, there is a tab all the way on the corner of the black locking tab of the connector. To do so, slide the tab out. And you'll hear it click in place and slide over. And now on the back side of the connector, we'll be installing our pins from our extension harness. Start with removing the rubber spacer in pin 22 using a pick tool. With the red and yellow wire from your extension harness, you'll be feeding it into pin 22. The tab on the bottom will face the bottom of where the connector is when you're feeding it in. Once the wire is seated, give it a gentle tug to make sure it's locked in place. And now we can do the same thing at pin 21. Remove the rubber spacer in the cavity of the connector. Perform the same thing as pin 22 at 21, taking your blue wire for running light, and with the locking tab facing down on the pin, slide it in till you hear it click, and you can do a wiggle to make sure it's in place. Then go ahead and cut back the tape on the harness to give yourself more working room on the next 2 wires. Now we'll be installing our ground wire, which is our black wire at pin 26, 4 over from the top row. Just like the other ones, grab your pick and fish out the rubber spacer. And grab your black wire, and with the tab facing down, fish it into the connector at pin 26. And then just like the other ones, give it a little wiggle to make sure it's locked in place. And now we can do the same thing at pin 25, which is on the top row, 5th from the left. That removed, take your white wire for your cargo light, and with the tab on the pin pointing down, install it. You'll hear it click in place, give it a good wiggle to make sure it's in place. We can now lock our pins back in. Start with moving the connector tab back over by pushing it over to the right. So that way. If sliding this lock is difficult, double check that the pins are fully inserted. Push down on all 4 corners to lock the connector plate back in position. Once your pins are fully seated and the white plate is locked in place, your connector is now good. You can start with zip tying it back up. Take your zip tie and tie your harness back to the connector. And now with our extension harness now installed, We'll route our extension harness along our door harness, keeping it out of the way of any moving parts, and inside the door cavity, out of the way of the window track. To safely route the harness through the door, you must go through the rubber grommet. To do so, you'll have to cut a notch in the side of the grommet and tuck the wires in. Then, feed the harness through and reinstall the grommet. Now, go ahead and continue securing the rest of the harness. Now, with our extension harness installed at the door connector, we'll be installing our extension harness into the cab at the door connector at the jam boot. We'll be routing the other end of our harness into the cabin and then installing our pins directly at the door jam boot. To gain further access to route your extension harness into the cabin, we'll start with removing the kick panel. Start with prying up on the kick panel. You'll then release it out towards the back of the vehicle. Right behind where we removed our kick panel, there are 3 harnesses held in place by trim clips. Pry the clips out of place to gain access to the other side of the door jam boot going toward the door. And as you can see in this cavity here is where your door jam boot sits. That is where we'll be routing our extension harness into the cabin. Now right between the door and the cabin, we'll have our door jam boot. Go ahead and free the rubber grommet. And then once you get one corner free, you could work your way around it, and now we can pull it out. And then we'll free this side of the door jam boot to the connector as well. Grab a trim tool, pry up, and work your way around the connector until it's free. Now I'm going to take a strained out metal piece and route it through the door jam boot. Once it pokes out through the other side, I'll take my extension harness that we're routing into the cabin, and the side without the terminals, I'll tape it to the strained out metal piece. With it taped up, we can pull it through. Now we can untape it. Once you feed it through, we can now feed it into the cabin at the opening of where the grommet we just removed. Don't pull the harness all the way through. We still need some slack on the harness to pin the wires into the door jam boot connector. We'll start with installing our terminals at the back side of the connector. However, to do so, just like the other connector, at the front side, we'll start with unlocking the connector. With the black latch pointing towards the right, you're going to pull out this white tab towards the right where the black latch is. Once you slide out the tab, we're now good to install our pins on the other side of the connector. We'll start with pinning our turn signal. Our turn signal is the red and yellow wire from your extension harness. We'll do it at pin 22. Pin 22 is the second row from the top, one over from the right. And this is with the red locking tab and the black latch pointing towards the right. And then you'll take your red and yellow wire, and with the tab pointing towards the top, you'll insert it into the cavity. I'm going to give this a wiggle test to make sure it's in place. And right next to that, we have pin 21, which is where we'll be installing our blue wire for running light. Just like our other one, remove the rubber spacer. You have your blue wire with the tab pointing towards the top on the end of the terminal, and then insert it. And then give it a little wiggle to make sure it is in place. And now we'll be installing our black wire at pin 26. Pin 26 with the black latch and the red tab pointing towards the right is 4 over from the right. Remove the white spacer. And now with it removed, grab your black wire and install it with the tab pointing up on the terminal. And give it a wiggle to make sure it's seated. And now we'll install our white wire for cargo light at pin 25, which is right next to the black wire we just installed. Install it the same way as the other ones. And now we could slide the white tab back into place. Once you hear it snap in place, it is now locked in. Now we can pull any extra slack through. However, do not pull all the slack through, as you'll want some room and to ensure the wires do not chafe. And now we can install the rubber boot back onto the connector by working your way around the connector. Now install your rubber grommet on your door jamb boot. Remember to leave some slack on your extension harness to ensure no chafing of the wires. With our mirror installed and our extension harness now routed and pinned in, we can do all the same steps on the passenger side. The steps are the same on the passenger side. However, right where the kick panel is, you'll have a fuse block that you'll have to set aside in order to route your harnesses into the cabin. To access the back of the grommet to route the extension harness in, you'll have to set this fuse box right here aside. On the bottom and top, there will be tabs. To press the tabs and slide it out. Now, once you set it aside, you now have access to the opening where the grommet sits. Just like your driver's side, route your harness in. Now we'll take the end of the wires we just ran into the cabin and tape it to a strained out metal piece. Take your strained out metal piece and feed it over to the driver's side through the back of the firewall. Once you pass it through to the driver's side, untape it from the strained out metal piece. On the driver's side, right behind the OBD port, we'll be tapping at the light control module right here. To remove the connector, slide down the white tab and then press in on the pink tab at the top, slide the connector out. Now at each of these connectors, you'll have a cover that you'll need to remove. To do so, you'll press in on the black tabs in the corners to remove it. We'll start with tapping our left-hand turn signal at the pink connector. Locate pin number 5, which is on the second row all the way towards the left. Following pin number 5 down, tap beyond where the black connector sits using your red T-tap from your kit. And now we'll take our red and yellow wire for our left-hand turn signal coming from the driver's side door and cut it to length. Once you cut it to length, strip the end of the wire. Take your wire and then insert it on the end with the butt connector and crimp it down.
Use a heat gun to shrink the connector.
Now take the other end of the fuse tap and install it at the red tap we just installed. Make sure you press it in all the way. At the same connector, with the white tab pointing up, we're going to be tapping our cargo light at pin 8. Pin 8 is in the second row from the top all the way to the right. Just like our left-hand turn signal, follow the wire down and tap using a red T-tap from your kit.
Now take both the left and right hand white wires and we are going to cut them to length, strip them back, and connect them. We'll be connecting them with the inline fuse in your kit via the attached butt connector.
Heat shrink the butt connector. And now we can install it directly at the wire we just tapped at. Now you can reinstall your plastic cover over the wires. And once it's in, plug the connector back in. Push the tab all the way in. Now we'll be tapping our right-hand turn signal. Just like the other two we just tapped at, you're gonna go over to your third connector, the green connector, and disconnect it. Pull the white tab, press in on the pin to release it. Now you'll have a cover that you'll need to remove. To do so, you'll press in on the black tabs in the corners to remove it.
Now we can tap into pin 6, which is in the second row from the top. With the white connector tab pointing up, it's one over from the left.
Trace the wire back, and just like our other ones, install your red T-tap. Take the red and yellow wire from your passenger side extension harness and cut and splice to length. Once done, we can now crimp it to the inline fuse.
Use a heat gun to shrink the connector. Take the spade connector on the other end of the inline fuse and connect it to the T-tap you just installed.
We can now reinstall our cover and plug our connector back in. We'll be tapping our running light at this connector all the way at the end, the light blue connector. Disconnect it like the other ones, pull down on the tab, press it, and remove it. You'll have a cover that you'll need to remove. Press in on the black tabs to remove it.
Now, we'll be installing our running light wire to the blue connector. We are going to be tapping to pin 28. Pin 28 is in the bottom row, second wire from the right. Install a red T-tap onto this wire.
Take your blue wires, cut them as needed, and splice them to length. Twist them together and install them to the fuse tab.
Use a heat gun to shrink the connector. Take the spade connector on the other end of the inline fuse and connect it to the T-tap you just installed.
Now you can install the cover to your connector.
Reinstall the connector, making sure to push up on the white tab to lock it in place. Take the two remaining black wires, measure them to length if needed, and strip them both back. Now, twist them together and install a ring terminal onto the end. Locate the ground stud back on the firewall. We are going to be installing the ring terminal onto this stud. Remove the nut and washer and install the ring terminal. Now reinstall the hardware. Then go ahead and clean up any loose wires by tucking them out of place and zip tying them. With the wiring harnesses now fully installed, you can reinstall the fuse block on the passenger side.
With all our wires tapped to, we can now start with reassembling our vehicle. We'll start along the door, reinstalling the wire trim clips, and then installing our kick panel. Now we could snap in our door connector right where it goes to the grommet. And now we could reinstall our door grommet connector, line it up with the black latch and the red locking tab facing up, press it into the connector, press down the latch till it locks, and then press in the red locking tab. Now take the speaker you removed, install the connector on the back, push in the red tab. Now align the bottom with the speaker hole and feed the connector back in, and install the screw you removed at the top. Now the upper part of your door panel where the triangular piece sits, if you removed that fully, you can install it now. And now we can reinstall our door panel, installing the connectors on the back side and the door lock latch. Take your connector, slide them in. While you slide them in, you'll rotate the latch over, snap it in, and then press the red tab in. Now we have another connector up top here. That one will just snap in. Now we could reinstall our door latch, take it, install the latch, pull it back, align it, and press in the clip. To install the door panel, you'll lift up and slide down the door panel to align it. Once it's in position, you can now snap in all the trim clips around the door panel. With that, we can install our 2 screws in the grab handle and the 2 screws at the bottom. And we can reinstall the rubber mat that goes in our door grab handle.
Now install the 2 bottom screws.
And now we could reconnect our battery. And that wraps up this install for our GM style tow mirrors on 23 and newer Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyon trucks. If you guys like what you see, head on over to our website at boostauto.com. For more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's all for now. We'll catch you in the next one.